Harassment is bad. Don't do it. Hey everyone, Kinnaid here. Today I'll be doing a video on one of Anita Sarkeesian's latest videos entitled Crisis Pregnancy Centers Definitely Deliver, and they make sure you do too. For those who don't know, Anita Sarkeesian is a feminist YouTuber who is famous for two things. The first is the following quote.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
To put this quote into context, she was talking about when she was learning about systems, such as systematic racism and sexism and so on. She also claims that she is not like that anymore, even though that is what her channel does. The second thing she is most famous for is her video series entitled Tropes vs. Women in Video Games, where she promised 5 videos by the end of the year for $6,000. She actually received over $150,000 and then promised a total of 15 videos, which took 3 years and an additional $750,000 to deliver on.
Imagine this. Your father has a heart attack and you're physically blocked from taking him to the emergency room because a barrel of monkeys is jumping around the sidewalk yelling that heart attacks are natural and beautiful. You'd be justifiably pissed off, right? Now imagine your father is persuaded to skip the ER and go to a crisis heart center that dangles bogus alternative heart attack options in appointment after appointment, and he misses the chance to have a life-saving bypass operation. You probably can't imagine that because we wouldn't allow it. There's a very good reason that we don't allow just any yahoo off the street to throw up crisis medical centers for heart disease, diabetes, or cancer, because it would be medically and ethically disastrous.
Firstly, anti-abortion protesters cannot physically stop you from entering an abortion clinic. Even if they attempt to, you can call the police and you will be able to safely enter and exit the building. Secondly, are you really equating an abortion to a bypass surgery? One saves lives and the other takes lives. Lastly, your whole bogus alternatives is a bit sketchy. Last I checked, the only way to guarantee that you don't get pregnant is by not having sex.
And yet, in thousands of unregulated facilities all across America, taxpayer-funded religious groups are tricking people into carrying pregnancies to term against their will at so-called crisis pregnancy centers.
They are classified as a non-profit organization. Just like you, Anita. I will give you that they do sometimes spread exaggerations or misinformation to push their narrative, but then again, so do you, Anita. They primarily offer counseling services, but at some facilities they do have equipment and licensed personnel who can perform basic services such as a sonogram or a pregnancy test on staff. Unless you can show me one example where one of these clinics straps someone to a bed and refuses to let them leave, then you will not convince me that they are having people carry pregnancies to term against their will. Everyone has free will. They can choose to continue to go to those facilities, or they can go to their normal doctor. They can choose to do either at any time.
If you're pregnant or just seeking family planning advice, don't be fooled if someone offers you a free medical consultation at one of these places. Their names might be benign, but the mission of these organizations is anything but. Crisis Pregnancy Centers, or CPCs, are funded by rabid anti-choice bigots. The agenda? Prevent people from exercising their legal and moral right to determine whether a pregnancy is right for them.
You call them the bigots, yet you refuse to listen to anyone who has a different opinion from you. Yes, most of the people who work in these facilities have strong Christian or Catholic backgrounds, one of the primary teachings of which is that all life is sacred. The key part there is all life. You want to claim that it's morally right to terminate a pregnancy. What you are talking about is ending a life. The debate often falls to the question of when is someone considered to be alive. If a person is considered dead when their heart stops beating, then why are they not considered to be alive when their heart starts beating? I have never once heard a single reasonable explanation for why this is not the case.
But in reality, there are less than 600 facilities in this country where a pregnant person can terminate a pregnancy.
Actually, according to abortiondocs.org, link in the description below, There are over 700 total abortion facilities in the nation.
Remember those 600 abortion clinics we mentioned? Well, only a handful perform late-term abortions after 21 weeks.
This is also not true. Notice how she doesn't even give a number here. There's a good reason for that. A handful is a subjective term that means different things to different people. Typically, it is used to refer to a small amount by proportion, say less than 10% or so. Of those 729 abortion facilities, 515 are classified as surgical facilities. That's over 70%. 70%. That is nowhere near a handful in number or proportion.
CPCs work with the abortion protesters who harass patients outside of bona fide women's health clinics.
Do you have any proof of this? That is quite a bold claim to make. You know what else is a bold thing to do? Protesting the US president.
Hey, so I was just walking down the street and there's another protest, which is awesome. This actually looks like a lot of young people who might have walked out of school. So we're in San Francisco again, obviously, and I just stumbled upon another protest. There's a lot of young people out, so I think it's a part of the mass school walkouts that are happening, and I believe they're happening around the country, protesting Trump as not our president. So we are in San Francisco, and I think a bunch of schools just walked out. So these are, appears a bunch of high school students who walked out to protest Trump as not their president. So we're in San Francisco, and there is a protest that's happening right now. I think a bunch of high school students walked out to protest Trump, and it's really great. There's a lot of local business owners and people that are working in local businesses coming out and giving high fives and cheering on these young people protesting that Trump is not their president and that this is not okay what's happening to this country. So those of you just tuning in, we're in San Francisco. There was a massive walkout in the Bay Area of high schools where students have walked out of classrooms to protest Trump. Okay, so we are in San Francisco. There is a massive walkout of Bay Area high school students who are protesting Trump's candidacy, presidency, saying that they're not his president. And my phone is gonna die soon, so if this just cuts out, I'm really sorry. I'll stay here as long as I can. Okay, y'all, this is a massive high school Bay Area student walkout that I've been filming. They're out here protesting Trump, saying that he's not their president, which good for them. This is our future. My phone is totally dead, so I'm gonna sign out now, but they're gonna keep going, so good. Yes, the more protests, the better.
Well, as a 301c nonprofit organization, a 301c nonprofit requires you to remain nonpartisan. Protesting the president isn't nonpartisan.
They claim to provide options and support. What they actually do is deny people access to licensed healthcare personnel and legitimate family planning advice.
How do they prevent someone from going to see their doctor? Can you provide even one case where someone was in some way made to be physically incapable of going to see their doctor?
If they do provide anything, it's lies about so-called abortion regret, abortion risks, and maybe a bag of diapers and a dollar store teddy bear.
Make no mistakes, there are risks to late-term abortions. Don't take my word for it. I now present to you a video about the abortion process. I will be showing the whole video in its entirety without interruption for the sole purpose of providing context.
My name is Dr. Anthony Levatino. I'm a practicing obstetrician-gynecologist, and I've performed over 1,200 abortions. Today I'm going to describe a second trimester surgical abortion called dilatation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is performed between 13 and 24 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a weighted speculum, like this one, that opens the vagina widely. Because second trimester babies are so large, this greater access facilitates a late-term abortion. Late-term abortion requires that the cervix be prepared 24 to 48 hours in advance with laminaria. Laminaria is a type of sterilized seaweed that absorbs water over 8 to 12 hours and swells to several times its original diameter. Once removed, metal dilators can be used to further open the cervix as needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, the suction tube is placed inside. A baby at 20 weeks gestation is as big as the length of my hand, from head to rump, not counting the legs. The suction machine is turned on, and pale yellow amniotic fluid surrounding the baby is suctioned out through the catheters. With babies this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. The baby's bones and skull are too strong to be torn apart by suction alone. This is a sofa clamp. A sofa clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs. Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications, including perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, with possible damage to the bowel, bladder, and other maternal organs. Infection and hemorrhage can also occur, which can even lead to death. Future pregnancies are also at greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time. I will no longer do any more abortions. When you finally figure out that killing a baby that big for money is wrong, that it doesn't take you too long to figure out it doesn't matter if the baby is this big or this big or this big or maybe even this big, it's all the same. And I haven't done any since then, and I never will.
For those who noticed that it said for up to 23 weeks, the process for after 23 weeks has only some slight variation to it. First, they inject the fetus with an overdose of a drug for heart problems. Meanwhile, they use the same method to dilate the cervix. The cervix is dilated for 2 days while the dead fetus remains inside the woman's womb. Should the fetus still be alive, they will give it another overdose. The hope is that by expanding the cervix at this time, that it will induce labor on the stillborn baby. If it doesn't, or if the baby is unable to be pushed out by the mother, then they resort to the method used in the previous video. While I do believe that abortion is wrong, I think that it is justified in some rare cases. If the child is a product of rape, the product of incest, would cause the death of the mother if carried to term, would carry a severe birth defect that would limit the child to only a few years of life, or if the mother has undergone some severe emotional trauma, that would make it unsafe for the pregnancy to continue, that these are all valid reasons for an abortion, but that these are the only valid reasons for an abortion. I do not believe that the 1% of cases justifies the other 99%. Anyone who engages in sexual activity is at risk for pregnancy. That is a risk you are accepting when you consent to sex. Most forms of birth control are only 99% effective. I actually know someone who had a kid when they thought it was impossible to happen. They hooked up at a bar one night. She was on the pill, he used a condom, and she even took the morning after pill the next day. Yet 9 months later, their daughter was born. There are even documented cases of women getting pregnant from anal sex. YoungWomen'sHealth.org, link in the description below, states that after anal sex, some of the semen may leak or splash near the vaginal opening, giving the sperm away into the vagina and allow for pregnancy. Women'sHealthMag.org, link in the description below, reports a rare condition in which a woman is born with one hole that is supposed to act as the vagina, urethra, and rectum. This is normally corrected by surgery at birth, but in some cases, the womb fuses to the rectum. This causes the vagina to be a dead end, but allows pregnancy to occur exclusively through anal sex. The point I'm making is that no matter how safe you think you are being, there is always the most remote chance that things can happen. Every time you have sex, you are rolling the dice. If you happen to lose, is it really morally acceptable to kill someone to cover up your mistake? Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, and feel free to speak your mind in the comments section below.